Daniel Harrington's German Shepherd, Scout, lay perfectly still beside his wheelchair in the packed courtroom. The magnificent dog's ears remained alert, his intelligent eyes tracking every movement while maintaining perfect discipline. To most observers, Scout appeared to be simply a well-trained service animal supporting his disabled owner. But those who knew better understood that Scout was much more than that. The courthouse buzzed with tension. Daniel adjusted his position, the empty space below his knees a constant reminder of the sacrifice he had made for his country. His military uniform, adorned with medals that spoke of courage and honor, contrasted sharply with the casual attire of those around him. The polished wood of the witness stand gleamed under the harsh fluorescent lights as the prosecution called their next witness. "The prosecution calls Nathan Reynolds to the stand," announced the District Attorney Catherine Winters, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the courtroom. Daniel's jaw tightened as Nathan Reynolds rose from his seat. The man walked with confidence that bordered on arrogance, his expensive suit and carefully styled hair painting the picture of success and trustworthiness. As Reynolds passed Daniel's row, Scout's ears flattened slightly, a subtle reaction that only Daniel noticed. "Mr. Reynolds," Catherine began after the witness was sworn in, "please tell the court about your relationship with Westridge Construction and specifically your interactions with Mr. Harrington." Reynolds cleared his throat, his expression somber and practiced. "I've been the financial director at Westridge for nearly a decade now. Daniel Harrington was hired by our company as part of our Veterans Employment Initiative after he returned from overseas. We were all deeply sympathetic to his situation and wanted to give him every opportunity to succeed, despite his limitations." Daniel's fingers curled around the armrests of his wheelchair, his knuckles turning white. Scout sensed the change, pressing closer against his leg in silent support. "And what position did Mr. Harrington hold at Westridge?" Catherine continued. "He worked in our accounting department. Given his background in military logistics, we thought it would be a good fit," Reynolds replied, his voice reflecting practiced concern. "Unfortunately, we began noticing discrepancies in our books about 6 months after his arrival. Small amounts at first, then larger sums. Nearly $500,000 disappeared from company accounts over the course of a year." A ripple of whispers spread through the courtroom. Judge Albert Blackwood tapped his gavel once, restoring order. "And your investigation led you to Mr. Harrington," Catherine prompted. Reynolds nodded solemnly. "Yes, the transactions were all processed during his shifts, using his access credentials. When confronted, he became defensive and uncooperative. We had no choice but to terminate his employment and press charges. It was disappointing, to say the least." Daniel's attorney, Henry Collins, a sharp-featured man with kind eyes that belied his fierce courtroom reputation, scribbled notes furiously. Daniel leaned over to whisper something in his ear, but Henry shook his head slightly, eyes never leaving Reynolds. "No further questions, Your Honor," Catherine said, returning to her seat. Judge Blackwood turned his attention to the defense table. "Your witness, Mr. Collins." Henry rose slowly, buttoning his jacket as he approached the witness stand. "Mr. Reynolds, you testified that the missing funds were transferred using Mr. Harrington's credentials, is that correct?" "Yes, that's correct," Reynolds replied confidently. "And during your internal investigation, did you consider the possibility that someone else might have used Mr. Harrington's login information?" Reynolds smiled thinly. "Of course. We're thorough professionals, Mr. Collins. The transactions occurred when Mr. Harrington was physically present in the building, and several were processed directly from his computer terminal." Henry nodded thoughtfully. "I see. And the security at Westridge, cameras, keycards, that sort of thing, they're all state-of-the-art, I imagine?" "Absolutely. We handle sensitive financial information for major clients. Security is paramount." "So it would be nearly impossible for someone to access Mr. Harrington's computer without his knowledge?" "I would say impossible, yes," Reynolds agreed. Henry paused, glancing back at Daniel, who sat perfectly still, his face unreadable. "Mr. Reynolds, are you familiar with the charity organization New Beginnings?" Reynolds hesitated for a fraction of a second, so brief that most wouldn't notice, but Daniel did. Scout's ears perked up. "I believe it's a veterans support charity. Westridge has made donations in the past." "More than donations, isn't that right?" Henry pressed. Isn't it true that Westridge Construction manages the development of their new rehabilitation center? Yes, that's correct. It's one of our community outreach projects. Henry walked back to the defense table and picked up a folder. Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit A. As Henry approached the bench with the document, Daniel's hand dropped discreetly to his side. His index finger tapped twice against his wheelchair. Scout's reaction was immediate but controlled. The shepherd rose silently to his feet, his posture changing subtly. To most observers, the dog had simply adjusted his position. But Daniel knew better. They had developed this signal system during their time together in the military. 2 taps meant alert. Judge Blackwood was reviewing the document Henry had presented when Scout suddenly let out a soft, distinctive whine. It wasn't loud, but in the quiet courtroom it caught everyone's attention. The judge looked up, his eyes meeting the German shepherd's intense gaze. "Is there a problem with your service animal, Mr. Harrington?" Judge Blackwood asked. Daniel straightened in his wheelchair. "Your Honor, Scout is specially trained. He only vocalizes when he detects something significant." Nathan Reynolds shifted uncomfortably in the witness stand, his previously confident demeanor showing the first cracks of uncertainty. He glanced at the courtroom doors, then back at Scout, who continued to stare at him with unwavering focus. "What exactly is your dog detecting, Mr. Harrington?" the judge pressed, his interest clearly piqued. Daniel looked directly at Reynolds. "Deception, Your Honor!" The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Catherine jumped to her feet. "Objection, this is absurd, Your Honor. A dog cannot detect lies." "Actually," Henry interjected, "Scout is no ordinary service dog. Before Mr. Harrington's injury, they served together in the military working dog program, specializing in behavioral detection. Scout was trained to recognize physiological changes associated with stress and deception, increased heart rate, subtle changes in body odor, micro-expressions." Judge Blackwood leaned forward, intrigued. "Is this accurate, Mr. Harrington?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. Scout and I worked with an elite unit that developed advanced detection methods. He's identified dozens of hidden explosives and individuals with hostile intent in high-pressure combat situations. His accuracy rate exceeds 96%. The judge considered this information for a moment, then turned his attention back to Reynolds, who was now visibly sweating. "While I cannot admit a dog's reaction as evidence, I am curious about this development." He turned to Henry. "Continue with your questioning, Counselor." Henry nodded, returning his attention to Reynolds. "Mr. Reynolds, let's talk about the New Beginnings Rehabilitation Center project and its budget allocation, shall we?" Reynolds tugged at his collar, his eyes darting between Scout, Henry, and the courtroom doors. I don't see how this is relevant to the current case." "It becomes relevant," Henry replied smoothly, "when we consider that the missing funds from Westridge exactly, to the penny, match the amount that was supposed to be allocated to specialized equipment for amputee veterans at the rehabilitation center. Equipment that was never purchased or installed, despite being listed as completed in your reports." A hush fell over the courtroom. Reynolds's face had gone pale. Scout remained perfectly still, his eyes never leaving the witness. There must be some mistake," Reynolds stammered. "No mistake," Henry said, his voice hardening. "We have the complete financial records right here, including the original budgets that were mysteriously altered after Mr. Harrington began asking questions about the discrepancies." Daniel watched as Reynolds seemed to deflate before their eyes. The man who had testified so confidently against him just minutes ago now looked cornered, desperate. "Your Honor," Henry continued, "we have evidence that Mr. Harrington was framed after he discovered the actual embezzlement scheme orchestrated by Mr. Reynolds and others at Westridge. They specifically targeted funds meant for disabled veterans, people like Mr. Harrington himself." Judge Blackwood's expression darkened. "These are serious allegations, Counselor. Do you have conclusive evidence?" "We do, Your Honor," Henry confirmed, "including recorded conversations, altered documents recovered from Mr. Reynolds's private cloud storage, and testimony from a whistleblower at Westridge who came forward last night." Reynolds suddenly stood, his face contorted with panic. "This is all a misunderstanding. I was just following orders from—" "Sit down, Mr. Reynolds," Judge Blackwood commanded, his voice like thunder in the now silent courtroom. He turned to the bailiff. "Please ensure Mr. Reynolds remains in the courthouse until we sort this out." As two court officers moved toward Reynolds, the man's composure completely shattered. "You don't understand. They'll come after me next. It wasn't just me. There are others involved, more powerful people." "That's enough." Judge Blackwood banged his gavel. "This court is in recess for 1 hour while I review this new evidence in my chambers. Mr. Reynolds will remain in custody." As Reynolds was escorted out, his eyes locked with Daniel's. There was fear there, but also something else, a flicker of desperate calculation. Daniel had seen that look before, in cornered individuals who still had one last desperate move to make. Scout sensed it too, his body tensing almost imperceptibly. "Something's not right," Daniel whispered to Henry as the courtroom began to clear. "Reynolds is scared, but not just of going to jail. He's afraid of someone else." Henry nodded grimly. The whistleblower mentioned a larger conspiracy. Apparently, the New Beginnings project is just the tip of the iceberg. There's evidence suggesting high-level involvement from people who would do anything to keep their names out of this. Daniel's hand rested on Scout's head, his fingers gently stroking the shepherd's fur. "We need to be careful. Reynolds knows he's cornered, and that makes him dangerous." "We have protection arranged," Henry assured him. "Court security has been doubled, and there's a detective from Major Crimes waiting to speak with you." As people filed out of the courtroom for the recess, Daniel watched the door through which Reynolds had been escorted. Scout remained vigilant beside him, a guardian of truth whose silent testimony had helped turn the tide of justice. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. Reynolds' panicked words echoed in his mind. There are others involved, more powerful people. Who were these people? How far would they go to protect themselves? And most importantly, what would their next move be? Daniel had survived battlefields and the devastating injury that had claimed his legs. He had endured the humiliation of false accusations and the painful betrayal by the company that had promised to honor his service. With Scout by his side, he had fought back against injustice. But he knew that the most dangerous phase of any conflict was when a wounded enemy still had the resources and will to strike back. As the courtroom emptied, Daniel leaned down to Scout, whose alert posture never wavered. "Stay sharp, buddy," he whispered. "I think this is just the beginning." Scout's ears twitched in acknowledgement. The bond between them, forged in combat and strengthened through adversity, would now be tested in ways neither of them could fully anticipate. But together, they had faced impossible odds before and prevailed. Whatever came next, they would face it the same way they had faced everything else, side by side, guardians of truth in a world where it was too often sacrificed for power and greed. The courthouse corridor buzzed with tension during the recess. Daniel's attorney, Henry, had stepped away to speak with the prosecutor, leaving Daniel and Scout momentarily alone. Daniel felt exposed without the protective walls of the courtroom, acutely aware of curious glances from passing strangers. Scout suddenly stiffened beside the wheelchair, a low rumble building in his chest. "What is it, boy?" Daniel whispered, his military instincts immediately on alert. The German shepherd's eyes were fixed on a woman approaching them, Jasmine Torres, a striking figure in a tailored suit who moved with deliberate confidence. Daniel recognized her instantly, Westridge Construction's lead corporate attorney. "Mr. Harrington," she greeted him, stopping at a respectful distance when Scout's rumble became more pronounced. "That's quite the performance your dog put on in there." Daniel's expression remained neutral. "Scout doesn't perform, Ms. Torres," he responds. She smiled, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I've come with an offer. The company is willing to drop all charges and provide a generous settlement if you agree to sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding today's revelations." "A cover-up," Daniel translated flatly. Jasmine shrugged one elegant shoulder. "A mutually beneficial resolution." Reynolds acted alone, of course, overzealous in his financial management. The company had no knowledge of his activities. Daniel studied her carefully. That's not what Reynolds was suggesting. "People say desperate things when cornered," she countered smoothly. "Consider the offer, Mr. Harrington. Your military pension combined with our settlement would ensure a very comfortable life." The alternative is a prolonged legal battle that could drag on for years. Before Daniel could respond, Scout suddenly turned his head toward the end of the hallway, his ears pricked forward. Daniel followed his gaze to see a courthouse security officer speaking urgently into his radio. "Excuse me," Daniel told Jasmine firmly, wheeling past her toward the commotion. The security officer looked up as Daniel approached. "Sir, you need to return to the courtroom area." "What's happening?" Daniel asked, noting the man's tense posture. The officer hesitated, then leaned closer. "The witness against you, Reynolds. He collapsed in the holding room. Paramedics are on their way." Daniel's blood ran cold. "Collapsed how?" "Looked like some kind of seizure. He was fine 1 minute, then on the floor the next." Scout pulled slightly on his harness, urging Daniel to move. The German Shepherd had been trained to detect more than just deception. He could sense danger, and right now every line of his body communicated urgency. "I need to find my attorney," Daniel said, spinning his wheelchair around. He spotted Henry returning from his meeting with the prosecutor, both of their expressions grave. "Daniel," Henry began. "Catherine just received a message." "Reynolds collapsed," Daniel finished for him. "This isn't coincidence, Henry." Catherine joined them, her earlier courtroom antagonism replaced by professional concern. "The judge wants everyone back in court immediately. He's placing the court under lockdown until we determine what happened." As they made their way back to the courtroom, Daniel felt Scout press against his wheelchair, providing silent comfort and protection. The Shepherd's behavior brought back memories of their deployments, the way Scout would stay close when danger was imminent, a living shield against unseen threats. Inside the courtroom, Judge Blackwood's expression was thunderous as he addressed the gathered attorneys and spectators. "The court has been informed of Mr. Reynolds' medical emergency," he announced. "Until we have more information, no one is to leave this courtroom. Court officers will secure all electronic devices." A murmur of concern rippled through the gallery. Daniel scanned the room, noting Jasmine Torres slipping into a seat near the back, her face unnaturally composed despite the chaos. "Your Honor," Catherine stood. "Given these developments, the prosecution requests a brief sidebar." Judge Blackwood nodded, and both attorneys approached the bench. Daniel couldn't hear their conversation, but he could read the growing concern on the judge's face. After several minutes, Blackwood dismissed the attorneys and addressed the court. "In light of information just provided to me, I am ordering the immediate review of the courthouse security footage from the past hour. Additionally," he continued, his gaze finding Daniel, "Mr. Harrington, would you and your service animal please approach the bench?" Surprised murmurs filled the courtroom as Daniel wheeled forward with Scout at his side. The judge leaned down, speaking softly, so only Daniel could hear. "Mr. Collins has informed me of your dog's specialized training. Given the suspicious nature of Mr. Reynolds' collapse, would Scout be able to inspect the holding room where it occurred?" Daniel nodded solemnly. "Yes, Your Honor. Scout is trained to detect various substances, including several that might cause symptoms resembling a seizure." Blackwood straightened. "The court will recess again while we conduct this investigation. 2 court officers will accompany Mr. Harrington and his service animal. The rest of you will remain here under supervision." As Daniel followed the officers out of the courtroom, he felt Jasmine Torres watching him, her composed mask finally showing cracks of genuine concern. The holding room was small and stark, with Reynolds' personal items gathered in an evidence bag on the table. Scout entered the room with focused determination, his nose working methodically across every surface. "What's he looking for?" one of the officers asked. "Anything out of place," Daniel explained. "Certain chemicals leave trace scents that humans can't detect, but dogs can." Scout circled the room twice before sitting abruptly beside the small trash can in the corner, his signal that he'd found something significant. The officer carefully tipped the contents onto a clean evidence sheet. Among the tissues and paperwork was a crumpled coffee cup. Scout's nose touched it deliberately. "That cup needs to be tested," Daniel said firmly. "Now." The rapid toxicology screening confirmed Daniel's suspicions. The cup contained traces of a fast-acting compound that could induce seizure-like symptoms. Reynolds hadn't just collapsed. He'd been poisoned right under the courthouse's security. When Daniel returned to the courtroom with this evidence, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Judge Blackwood ordered an immediate criminal investigation, and the prosecutor who had been so determined to convict Daniel now found herself allying with him against a much larger threat. "Someone doesn't want Reynolds to talk," Catherine said grimly as they reviewed the security footage in the judge's chambers. "The question is, who had access to him after he was taken into custody?" The footage revealed little at first glance. Reynolds had been alone in the holding room, except for brief visits from court officers. But Scout, watching the screen from beside Daniel's wheelchair, suddenly gave his alert whine. Daniel leaned forward, studying the frame. "Go back 15 seconds. The footage rewound, showing a court officer bringing Reynolds a cup of coffee. Nothing seemed unusual until Daniel pointed to the officer's hand. "That ring, zoom in." The enlarged image revealed a distinctive signet ring with a familiar emblem, the Westridge Construction Company logo. "That's not a court officer," Daniel said quietly. "That's Yolanda Mercer, Westridge's head of security. I'd recognize that ring anywhere." The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. How had Westridge's security chief gained access to the courthouse in an officer's uniform? Who had authorized the falsified credentials? And most importantly, how deep did this conspiracy really go? As the investigation expanded, Scout remained by Daniel's side, his specialized training proving invaluable. The German Shepherd's abilities extended beyond the courtroom, helping identify disguised Westridge employees attempting to access the secure areas of the courthouse and alerting to surveillance devices hidden in Daniel's temporary accommodations. Reynolds survived the poisoning attempt, but remained under heavy security in the hospital, unable or unwilling to provide additional testimony. With each passing day, Daniel felt the invisible noose tightening around him and Scout. Someone powerful wanted them silenced, and they weren't finished trying. The turning point came when Scout, during a scheduled break outside the courthouse, suddenly pulled Daniel's wheelchair toward a maintenance van parked nearby. The Shepherd's behavior was so insistent that Daniel alerted their security detail. The van proved to be empty of people, but contained surveillance equipment focused on the courthouse entrances. More disturbing was the detailed file on Daniel and Scout, photographs, schedules, even medical records. Someone had been watching their every move, looking for vulnerabilities to exploit. That night, as Daniel prepared for bed in the safe house the court had arranged, he heard Scout's low warning growl at the bedroom door. Years of military partnership had taught Daniel to trust that sound implicitly. Someone was in the house, someone who shouldn't be. Daniel silently reached for his phone, sending the predetermined distress signal to Henry and the security team. Then, with practiced movements, he transferred from his bed to the wheelchair and retrieved the handgun from its hidden compartment. The handle of his bedroom door turned slowly. Scout positioned himself between Daniel and the door, his powerful body coiled and ready. When the door finally swung open, Daniel found himself face to face with the last person he expected to see. Nathan Reynolds himself, pale and unsteady, but very much alive and free from his hospital bed. "Don't shoot," Reynolds whispered, his hands trembling. "I had to get away from them. They're going to kill me, just like they tried to do in the courthouse." Scout maintained his protective stance, but didn't advance, sensing Daniel's hesitation. "How did you find me?" Daniel demanded, the gun still raised. Reynolds swallowed hard. "I've been part of this from the beginning. I know all the protocols." His eyes darted nervously to the window. "We don't have much time. I came to warn you, and to make things right." Daniel's finger remained steady on the trigger. "Why should I trust you?" "Because," Reynolds said, pulling a flash drive from his pocket, "I have proof that will bring down everyone involved, including myself. And because I know they planted a bomb in your car that's set to detonate in the morning." Outside, sirens wailed in the distance as the security team responded to Daniel's alert. Time was running out for both men. Daniel stared hard at Reynolds, then at Scout, who had relaxed his stance slightly, a sign that the immediate threat had diminished. In that moment, Daniel faced the most difficult decision of his life: trust the man who had tried to destroy him, or risk losing everything they had fought for. "Get down," Daniel commanded, making a split-second decision as headlights swept across the window. Reynolds dropped to the floor while Scout positioned himself protectively in front of Daniel. The security team burst through the front door moments later, weapons drawn. Catherine Winters was with them, her prosecutor's badge granting her authority in this investigation that had grown far beyond a simple embezzlement case. "Reynolds," she gasped, spotting the fugitive on the floor. "He says there's a bomb in my car," Daniel said tersely, "and he has evidence on that drive that implicates everyone involved." Catherine motioned to the security team. "Check the vehicle. Full bomb protocol." As one agent carefully took the flash drive from Reynolds, Catherine fixed the man with a steely gaze. "Start talking. Now." Reynolds sank into a chair, his face haggard. It was never supposed to go this far. The New Beginnings project was just meant to be a simple skimming operation. Take a percentage off the top, doctor the books. But then we discovered something much bigger. "What exactly?" Daniel pressed. "The rehabilitation center wasn't just for veterans," Reynolds explained. "It was being designed with hidden features, secure rooms, surveillance systems, specialized containment areas. Nothing that would appear on the public plans." Catherine frowned. "For what purpose?" "Private military contractors," Reynolds said quietly. "Westridge has connections to several firms that provide enhanced interrogation services. The center was designed to be dual-purpose, a legitimate rehabilitation facility on the surface, with hidden areas for other activities." Daniel felt physically ill. A center supposedly dedicated to helping wounded veterans like himself was being constructed as a front for torture facilities. The betrayal cut deep. "I found out when Daniel started asking questions about the budget discrepancies," Reynolds continued. "By then, I was already compromised. They threatened my family if I didn't help frame him." "Who is they?" Catherine demanded. "It starts with Yolanda Mercer and Jasmine Torres, but goes higher, all the way to Yvette Harrison, the CEO. An agent burst back into the room. "There was an explosive device in the vehicle. Bomb squad is neutralizing it now." Catherine's phone buzzed with an incoming message. Her expression hardened as she read it. "Judge Blackwood has just issued emergency warrants for everyone Reynolds named, plus authorization for immediate seizure of all Westridge servers and documents." "It won't be enough," Reynolds warned. "The evidence on that drive shows that Westridge has people in law enforcement, the courts, even federal agencies. Moving against them directly could tip them off." Daniel exchanged a look with Scout, who had maintained his vigilant guard position. "Then we need to change the approach. Instead of going after them, we make them come to us." By dawn, an elaborate trap had been set. News outlets received anonymous tips about a major breakthrough in the Harrington case, with hints that a key witness with damning evidence would be transferred to federal custody that morning. In reality, the convoy leaving the safe house contained only decoys. Daniel, Scout, Reynolds, and Catherine remained behind with a small team of trusted agents personally vetted by Judge Blackwood. Reynolds had spent the night helping them understand the full scope of Westridge's operation, how they had expanded from construction into private security, using their legitimate business as cover for darker ventures. "Yvette Harrison is the mastermind," he explained. "She has political ambitions beyond Westridge. The rehabilitation center was meant to be her crowning achievement, proof of her philanthropic spirit, while secretly serving as a demonstration facility for potential clients interested in their enhanced security solutions." Daniel's hands tightened on his wheelchair armrests. "And I was the perfect scapegoat, a wounded veteran with access to the financial records." "Your injury made you the ideal target," Reynolds admitted shamefully. "They calculated that people would believe a disabled veteran might feel entitled to take something back after his sacrifice." Scout suddenly lifted his head, ears alert. Through the window, they spotted a black SUV moving slowly past the house for the second time in 10 minutes. "They're here," Daniel said quietly. Catherine activated her radio. "All units, maintain positions. Do not engage unless directly threatened." What followed was a masterclass in patient strategy. Rather than confronting the surveillance vehicles directly, they allowed Westridge's team to believe their presence remained undetected. Meanwhile, the evidence from Reynolds's flash drive was being securely uploaded to multiple federal agencies, with Judge Blackwood personally briefing the Attorney General. By midday, Westridge's desperation became evident. Their surveillance grew more obvious, and electronic probes against the safe house's security systems increased. They knew Reynolds had talked, and they were running out of options. The attack, when it came, was swift and professional. 3 teams converged on the safe house simultaneously, one cutting power, another jamming communications, while a third breached the perimeter. What they didn't know was that this response was exactly what Daniel had anticipated. As armed figures entered the house, they found themselves caught in pre-positioned spotlights powered by backup generators. Their every move was being live-streamed to Judge Blackwood's secure courtroom, where federal agents, journalists, and legal observers watched in stunned silence. Scout performed flawlessly, his military training evident as he helped Daniel navigate through the chaos. When one attacker cornered them in the kitchen, Scout launched himself with precision, disabling the man without causing permanent injury, just as he'd been trained to do in combat zones. The standoff ended when Jasmine Torres herself entered the house, clearly expecting to find a cleanup operation nearly complete. Instead, she found herself surrounded by federal agents emerging from hidden positions throughout the property. "Jasmine Torres," Catherine announced formally, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, attempted murder, and about 24 other charges we'll sort out later." Jasmine's composed facade finally shattered. "You don't understand what you're doing," she hissed. "Do you have any idea who you're going against, how far this reaches?" "Actually," Daniel said, wheeling forward with Scout at his side, "we do. That's why we made sure the whole world was watching." He gestured to the small camera pinned to Scout's service vest, the livestream that had been broadcasting everything to the courtroom and, by Judge Blackwood's authorization, to selected media outlets. Within hours, the case exploded across national news. Westridge Construction's stock plummeted as federal agents raided their headquarters. Yvette Harrison was apprehended while attempting to board a private jet to a non-extradition country. The intricate web of corruption began to unravel as those involved rushed to make deals in exchange for leniency. 1 month later, Daniel sat in Judge Blackwood's chambers alongside Catherine, Henry, and Scout. The German Shepherd lay contentedly at Daniel's feet, occasionally accepting gentle scratches behind his ears. "The Justice Department has formally dropped all charges against you," Judge Blackwood confirmed. "Furthermore, they're offering a substantial settlement for wrongful prosecution and the trauma you've endured." "What about the rehabilitation center?" Daniel asked. The question had been weighing on him throughout the proceedings. Catherine smiled. "That's actually why I asked for this meeting. The government has seized the property and is looking for someone to oversee its conversion into what it was supposed to be, a genuine rehabilitation center for veterans. Someone with first-hand experience of the challenges wounded veterans face," Henry added meaningfully. Daniel's eyebrows rose. "You want me to run it?" "With a proper budget and complete transparency," Judge Blackwood confirmed. "Your military logistics background, combined with your accounting experience, makes you uniquely qualified." Daniel looked down at Scout, who gazed back with those intelligent eyes that had seen him through the darkest moments of his life. "What do you think, buddy? Ready for a new mission?" Scout's tail thumped against the floor in clear approval. 6 months later, the New Beginnings Veterans Rehabilitation Center opened its doors under Daniel's leadership. The facility specialized in comprehensive care for wounded service members, with a particular emphasis on the human-animal bond that had proven so crucial in Daniel's own journey. Scout became the center's unofficial mascot, helping to train a new generation of service dogs while continuing his devoted partnership with Daniel. His calm presence brought comfort to veterans struggling with both physical and psychological wounds, and his story, now widely known through media coverage of the Westridge case, inspired a nationwide program pairing combat veterans with specially trained service animals. Nathan Reynolds received a reduced sentence in exchange for his testimony. His cooperation proved invaluable in dismantling not just Westridge's operations, but several connected enterprises. During his prison term, he developed a program teaching financial literacy to inmates, finding a measure of redemption in helping others avoid the ethical compromises that had led to his downfall. Jasmine Torres and Yolanda Mercer both received substantial sentences for their roles in the conspiracy. During the trials, evidence emerged that Torres had been involved in similar operations with other companies, using her legal expertise to conceal criminal activities behind layers of seemingly legitimate business transactions. Yvette Harrison faced the most severe consequences. Her trial revealed decades of corruption, with connections to influential figures across business and politics. Her conviction sent shockwaves through certain circles, triggering investigations into other companies with similar operating patterns. Catherine Winters, whose perspective had shifted dramatically during the case, left the prosecutor's office to establish a non-profit organization focused on corporate accountability. She became a frequent visitor to the rehabilitation center, often consulting with Daniel on cases involving fraud against government programs. Judge Albert Blackwood continued his distinguished career on the bench, but with a renewed sensitivity to cases involving veterans and service animals. He championed legislation expanding legal protections for service animals in courtrooms and other official settings, citing Scout's crucial role in bringing justice to the Westridge case. Henry Collins found his law practice transformed by his involvement in the case. He became known as an advocate for whistleblowers and those wrongfully accused, using his experience with Daniel to develop new strategies for exposing corporate misconduct. As for Daniel and Scout, their partnership continued to deepen. The trauma they had endured together, both in combat and in the fight against Westridge, had forged a bond that transcended the typical relationship between a man and his service animal. They were partners in the truest sense, each making the other stronger. On the anniversary of the courtroom confrontation that had started it all, Daniel sat in his office at the rehabilitation center, reviewing the facility's latest success metrics. The center had already helped hundreds of veterans reclaim their lives, with satisfaction ratings that exceeded all expectations. A soft whine drew his attention to Scout, who had risen from his bed in the corner and was looking expectantly toward the door. "What is it, buddy?" Daniel asked, recognizing the particular sound Scout made when he sensed someone familiar approaching. The door opened to reveal a young woman in a military uniform, her prosthetic leg visible beneath her skirt. Behind her stood several other wounded veterans, all looking somewhat nervous but determined. "Mr. Harrington," the woman said, "we wanted to thank you personally. What you've built here, what you and Scout fought for, it's changed our lives." Daniel wheeled forward to greet them, Scout moving smoothly at his side. "No thanks needed. This is exactly what the center was always meant to be." As he showed the group around the facility, introducing them to staff and explaining the various programs available, Daniel reflected on the journey that had brought him here. From the battlefield where he had lost his legs, to the courtroom where he had nearly lost his freedom, to this moment of purpose and fulfillment, none of it would have been possible without the loyal companion who had never left his side. Scout had been more than a service dog, more than a military partner. He had been a guardian of truth when lies threatened to prevail, a source of strength when weakness seemed inevitable, and living proof that sometimes the most profound acts of heroism come in the most unexpected forms. That evening, as Daniel and Scout watched the sunset from the center's garden, surrounded by veterans finding their own paths to healing, Daniel scratched his faithful companion behind the ears. "You know what, Scout? Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us exactly where we need to be." Scout rested his head on Daniel's lap, his expressive eyes seeming to say that he had known this all along. Daniel smiled, understanding the wisdom in his companion's steadfast loyalty. The road had been difficult, the battles hard fought, but together they had transformed betrayal into purpose, pain into healing, and injustice into something truly good. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.